Benue Northeast. Mr. President, why none of us will oppose this supplementary budget? Mr. President, it is important for us to advert the minds of senators and Nigerians to the general macro and microeconomic issues that will arise from the budget. Mr. President, yes, there's a need for the government to seriously pay attention to insecurity in the country and also the issue of COVID-19. But Mr. President, you have a budget of 890-something billion. And then you have a deficit of 760, Mr. President. That is bad budgeting. Mr. President, if we have a budget of 894 billion, and then you have a revenue inflow of 135 billion, and then you are experiencing a deficit of 760 billion in a budget. Mr. President, I don't think that while addressing a problem, you are creating numerous more problems than the one you seek to address. I say this because you look at the financing item of the budget. Mr. President, the financing item of the budget are from borrowing. And borrowing forms the bigger stock of the financing item, which is 715 billion. In the main budget, we have a very high deficit level, which of course have affected the macroeconomic management. We are having inflation. Nobody knows how this inflation are coming. And so we must be careful in addressing this problem. And so for me, Mr. President, we have discussed the issue of quantitative easing, which is what I think is going to happen here. The Committee on Finance have, in their investigation, recovered money from ministries and departments of over 1 trillion. And so I do not see how, if we recover that money, we are going to borrow when we know that this borrowing will add to the deficit of the country. And so, Mr. President, for me, borrowing is what worries me, and the financing item of the deficit is what should worry everybody. While we agree totally that there's a need for Mr. President to fight insurgency, terrorism, and all of that, we should also be mindful of the microeconomic management of the country, which has skyrocketed the exchange rate, which has brought about inflation in the country. And so if we have 135 billion revenue inflow, and you have a budget of 890 something, with a deficit of 760, Mr. President, that is bad budgeting. And this Senate should advert the minds of Nigerians that yes, we agree that this supplementary budget will pass, but the people who are responsible for this budgeting should think deeper. Like I said, Mr. President, because you were being distracted, the Committee on Finance have recovered over 1 trillion naira from ministries and departments. So why are we borrowing 800 and something and then adding to the deficit, which we already have over 5 trillion deficit? Because this will add to the deficit. What intent this means is that in 2022 budget, we have a deficit of over 10 trillion. And that means that ab initio, you don't have a budget. So my worry is that let the Minister of Finance seek the money that has been recovered by the Committee on Finance, which was announced by my chairman, a public account, other than going to borrow this money and add to the deficit of the country, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Senator Ibrahim Gobir. But you have only 1.5 minutes because we have to close before 2, or just by 2.